Hey everyone, welcome back and thank you for joining me for the 5th episode of this series. This week I have 2 new pages to show you and I'll share another style of bookmaking. We'll start with the left page that has this little booklet. If you remember, in the second video of this series I used a classic sewing bookbinding technique. Today I'm using another classic book type, the accordion style book. It's very simple but effective and can be used in many different ways. I started by cutting a long strip of paper. The length of the strip is decided by the number of pages that you want and the size of each page, or more accurately, its width. I decided to go with 6 pages, each of them 5.5 centimeters wide. That's about 2¼ inch. So 6 times 5.5 gives us 33, and that's the length of the strip that I need. Once I had the paper cut to size, I inked and stained it on both sides to make it look aged. When the paper is inked and dry, we're ready to start folding. I used a scoreboard and scored the paper strip every 5.5 centimeters. You could just use a ruler, mark the fold lines and fold away, but scoring the lines first does give cleaner looking folds, plus no need to erase any marking in the end. To create the booklet, you just follow the lines and fold back and forth. I make sure to keep the fold lines straight and enforce them with a bone folder, but you can just use your fingernail basically. This style of book is familiar mainly from brochures and flyers, but it is used in many ways. You can think, for example, of these tiny little local guidebooks that you sometimes find in tourist shops next to the cashier. I'm making a little insect guide. It's a very basic one that would have been a very cheap one to get. And that fits with the book style because accordion books are easier and cheaper to make. When the folding was done, I added some darker ink to the fold areas. These are the areas that are most exposed and tend to get more dirty and worn over time in comparison to the rest of the page. Once I was happy with the staining, I got to stamping. For the cover, I taped down the folded strip so it won't move. And honestly, I have no idea why I did that. Why I didn't just open the folds and stamped on the front page. But, oh well, works anyway. I stamped a frame and added the title in an old set of letter stamps that I have. I use it a lot. It's smaller than most font stamp sets and it has this nice classic type look. I didn't get a good impression the first time, but I fixed that and filled in the missing letters. Then I stamped the bugs, and this time I used the stamping tool to be sure that I won't mess up. It's one thing to fix a letter, but it's a whole other thing with detailed images like this. The insects, by the way, are all from this awesome stamp set by Tim Holtz called Entomology, and I just stamped a different insect on each page. Finding this kind of generic guide in the journal of a professional researcher is somewhat curious. There's nothing fancy about an accordion book, it's simple folding, which makes the production of such booklets very cheap comparatively to other bookmaking methods. They also don't have much room for information. He would definitely need a much more thorough guide for his work. So the topic fits, but the style of the book? Not so much. So we can maybe consider why it's even here. When I had all the bugs stamped, and aren't they awesome? I used a marker to partially ink the figure for each image. The stamp only has Fig 1 and Fig 2, and I have 10 images. So I stamped Fig under each of the bugs, and then just used the fine tip of the same marker to write the numbers. This marker partial stamping trick is super useful. Now that the booklet is ready, we can move on to the rest of the page. I started with an inked background and added some stamping. The background inking was like what I did with the booklet, but if you want to see it done on a page like this, you can check out the first video of the series. You've seen me use this cursive text stamp several times. It's from the same stamp set as the insects. I stamped it in white for just a little bit of detail in the background, and then brought another text stamp and partially stamped it in second generation, and third, and so on. To add a closure to the booklet, so it wouldn't flop around in the journal page, I glued a ribbon on the back, where it would be hidden. Then it was time to assemble everything, and this is a fairly simple page composition-wise. I just added a couple of ephemera pieces and adhered the booklet. I opened it to be sure that the back adhered well and that none of the other pages got glued by mistake. To finish, I inked up a bit over the edges of the pieces. And I wanted to add a stamp at this point, but I didn't want it on the booklet cover, so I just used a scrap of paper to mask it off. And that's it for this page. Let's move to the right one. The right page also has a simple composition that was built to continue the left page. The focal is a colorful butterfly that I stamped with a marker and then colored. This is the same technique that I used for the iris in the third entry of this series. The marker gives a more painterly quality to the image, and it makes it very easy to add more ink and depth in specific areas. I didn't follow a specific species with the coloring of this butterfly. I just knew I wanted a yellow-orange butterfly for a pop of color, and also because these colors connect to the butterfly wing in the first page of the journal. I used distress ink for the coloring and chose some vibrant colors, but because the background was done in distress oxide inks, the vibrance was reduced. Now for this project, it's perfect because it gave the colors this faded, aged look, but it is something to take into account when you're using these inks. When the butterfly was done, I added some ephemera. I wanted the filed label at the bottom to be in an angle, but I didn't want it to stick off the final page, so I just cut off a tiny bit of it. The labels I've used in both these pages are all labels that we've seen before, and they connect with the journal owner's work. After the turmoil we've seen last week, it looks like things went back to normal, or at least he's more able to focus. At this point, I brought the left page in so I could check and see how they work together, and I decided to add a little bit of text stamping to the right page as well. Let's have a better look at the two pages together. You can see how the butterfly is this pop of color in the overall composition and balances the diagonal line that crosses both pages. I added a stamp on the cover of the booklet, just this little flourish, it just felt a bit too plain. The booklet can open both directions and have images on both sides. And a note. I understand. Please take care. R. That's a new character for us. Could it be that the booklet was a gift from this R? And what did he or she mean to our writer? Next week we'll close this project. I hope you'll tune in for the binding and finish. Till then, thank you for watching.